Welcome to the NPTE Final Frontier podcast, helping one student at a time. Visit NPTEFF.com to enroll today so you can pass tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us here on the NPTE Final Frontier podcast. My name is Emily.
And my name is David. Today, we will be discussing what it is like to train for a marathon and how this training can relate back to your NPTE preparation.
All right, so for those of you who are not aware, a marathon is a long distance foot race with a distance of approximately 42.2 kilometers or 26.2 miles. So training for a marathon normally takes approximately 16 to 18 weeks for those already running or somewhat conditioned. So I recently ran my first marathon in Philadelphia, PA on November 20th. And training and running for my first marathon has taught me so much more than simply how to run a race. After spending some time reflecting after the race, I realized a lot of the things I have learned while training carried over a lot to preparation for the NPT exam.
Emily did so great that she even inspired Rocky to go back into the ring again. But congratulations, Emily. But
Thank you.
You're welcome. But let's first talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you learned while training for the race and how this actually carried over to preparing for the NPTE.
So I think one of the biggest things that I learned while training was the importance of having a training plan, which is similar to studying for the boards. I think just having a plan, having something to help kind of give you a day-to-day goal of what you need to accomplish and how you're going to succeed and pass the exam or how you're going to accomplish your marathon. It's very similar. So I had a plan that I stuck with. And with that plan, I think what's important to know is that you need to be flexible with that plan. Some days I just wasn't able to accomplish all of my goals and I had to rearrange some things. But at the end of the day or at the end of the week, I still hit all of my main targets, which is just like studying for the boards exam. It's okay to not always be able to finish everything on your plan. Other things are going to come up. Things happen in our lives. That's normal. But still understanding that you need to get to them at another point and holding yourself accountable to check them all off at some point, I think is one of the biggest things I learned.
And also, what's one of the keys to success while you were training and preparing?
So I think having the plan, but more importantly, being flexible with that plan. I think at first I was being very rigid and concrete and saying, okay, well, I need to do this at this time, and there's no other way for me to do it. But there's always other ways. So being flexible with your plan while holding yourself accountable and understanding that you're training, you're learning, you're studying. It's okay to learn as you go and learn from mistakes, learn what works, learn what doesn't, and readjust as needed.
And with that flexibility, how did you personally adjust yourself? Did you get like really hard on yourself if, let's say, you weren't going to meet a goal? Did you start to get hard on yourself, or did you recognize that aspect that, you know what, I could do more a little bit later on?
Ooh, I think that's a really good question. So I think at first I was being very hard on myself because that's just how I am. But a few weeks in, I realized it truly is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, with training, you're training for weeks, for months. I trained for a little over 4 months. And I learned early on that being hard on myself does not benefit me or help me achieve my goals. So although I was hard on myself at first, I learned very quickly that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make adjustments. And I can't be hard on myself. I need to just support myself and trust the process throughout the whole journey.
I think that's incredible. And that sounds just like this exam and so many people listening.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so many people listening right now. I mean, for those listening, how many times have you personally felt that weight on your shoulders just get a little bit heavier because you didn't get to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish in that day? So I think that's so important that with what you just mentioned, Emily, that this is a common trend throughout life, even not just this exam, but it's okay. You're going to have those moments where it's going to feel overwhelming that you may not get what you want to get done. You may not hit that goal for the day, but it's normal and it's okay.
And with that being said, I think it's important to recognize that we're all human. It's okay to, be hard on ourselves at times, but we need to acknowledge and recognize when we're doing that, take a step back to reflect and see what we can do to better help ourselves, not only for studying, not only for training for a run, but just in general for our well-being. It's very important.
Definitely. So you mentioned about the months of training that you've had, but what about now the hours before the exam, the hours before the race? How did you what carried over with that race preparation a few hours before and what can actually be contributed to this NPTE a few hours before the exam before you get into that prometric center?
Oh, so this is so important, and I love this question for a few main reasons. So, first, let's discuss the night before the race or the night before the exam, because I did very similar things. I got to bed early. I got a good night's rest to help me recharge and be ready for the next day. I had all of my clothes and everything I would need laid out the night before so that I was ready for the morning. The last thing I wanted to do was to be rushing around in the morning, maybe forget something I needed. So I had everything laid out and ready the night before. And I tried to not think about the race, just like I tried to not think about the exam. I tried to, keep my mind distracted just to help me relax and just focus on myself that night and get ready for the next day because I think it's so important to know when to close the books or when to take a step back and just help yourself mentally recharge and prepare. So that is what I did the night before. And then the morning of, since I already had everything laid out and ready for me, I woke up early to have myself a nice balanced breakfast, get myself ready for the day. I gave myself extra time to get to the race early so that I was prepared because I had to go through security checkpoints and deal with long lines. Just like for the exam, you want to get there early, you want to be prepared. The last thing you want to be doing is rushing to your exam because that's just going to help. Actually, that's not going to really help anything. That's just going to help you get overwhelmed and, overcome with emotions, which is the last thing you want right before the exam or a race.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned already this was 26.2 miles. So the last thing you want to do is feel that pure adrenaline rush and feel overwhelmed and that anxiety strike you when it really shouldn't strike at that moment.
Which is just like the exam, right? It's 5 hours in length. It's a long exam. So the last thing you want to be doing is using your energy on stressing out over things before the exam even starts.
That's great. And since you mentioned that length of the exam, what was your time for the marathon?
3 hours and 44 minutes and 17 seconds, which I broke my goal. I wanted to sub 4 hours, so I wanted to finish in under 4 hours. So I was very proud of that.
That's awesome. Well, we are all so very proud of you. And I heard a rumor that Usain Bolt actually has a picture of you now up on his wall to inspire him to start training. Is that true?
This rumor may be true. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well, now talk to us a little bit about what you learned while actually running the race and how this can carry over to that NPTE.
All right. So I think one of the biggest things I learned was to pace myself. A lot of people told me early on, you can't come out too strong. You need to be ready to be running for several hours. Just like the exam, it's a 5 hour exam length, like we just talked about. You need to pace yourself. You need to be prepared that, well, it's 5 hours in length. I need to be able to sit for this full 5 hours and be able to stay engaged and motivated throughout the exam or throughout a run. So I really tried to pace myself early on and be ready to stay in the right mindset throughout the entire time. So pacing was definitely a big thing. And with pacing came my training. By training for these months leading up to this race, I was already prepared. My body was already ready for what I was about to put it through. Just like the exam, you've been studying for weeks, for months. You are prepared for this exam. You've done everything you needed to do, especially if you're taking your practice exams, which is so important to help build that stamina and confidence. When it comes to the exam day, you just need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and know that you're ready for this and take it one step at a time or one question at a time.
I mean, as you made mention, it's a marathon, not a race.
Exactly.
Now that we have heard about Emily's experiences while running and training for her first marathon and how this can carry over to the NPTE, here's a quote from Oprah Winfrey. Running is the greatest metaphor for life because you get out of it what you put into it. So, that being said, Warriors, go ahead, put it all into it, hold nothing back, remain all in, and go get your dream. You are going to get what you put in. So, let's go get this, Warriors. You are powerful, you are strong, you are a final frontier warrior. You will pass.
Thank you very much for listening. For more information on the NPTE Final Frontier, please visit npteff.com. You can also check out all of our social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Till next time, have a great day and a powerful tomorrow.